A blessing from the Lord. God be praised.
And there was much rejoicing.
Well, hello to the people once again. Welcome back to Literature and Robes with your host, Jared. That's me.
Are you sure about that?
I'm here today to talk about a little something different. Typically, I talk about fantasy and sci-fi titles, authors, things like that. When I started this channel, I did want to do some nonfiction or some educational type things. And in this case today, we want to talk about a memoir, more or less. It is a book written by Salman Rushdie. The book is called Knife, and it recently was just released.
And if you don't know, now you know, you know.
Basically, it's a telling of his experience of when he was attacked at a free speech seminar, of all things, a few years back. Salman is a very complex author. He's world-renowned for many of his writings. One of his most famous writings is the Satanic Verses, which is something that I haven't read yet, but this is very much a divisive book in India, Pakistan, and the Middle Eastern countries of the world, because this book challenges certain belief systems, especially religious belief systems within the country that he grew up in, and he was basically excommunicated or kicked out, ostracized from the country from his literary and artistic views about religion.
Because you gonna die.
He's been out of the public or the mind's eye for the fatwa that was issued upon him, which is basically a religious law. A fatwa is something that is an action that religious followers can take to save and preserve the religious text. And sometimes the fatwa can come to violence. And that is very much what Salman Rushdie has faced for many, many years. He moved out of his country to England, and then even in England he experienced some very crazy things and moved to America eventually. So he's been through a lot, although it's been several decades since the fatwa was issued. So a lot of things appeared to be settled, like the heat of 40 years ago has finally simmered down. Well, apparently it hasn't. So a lot of religions come under criticism, but in Middle Eastern cultures, it's something altogether different. To speak against the creator, the prophet, any of the religious texts that are taken by those who believe as the authority and the word of their God, that there is nothing inherently wrong inside the passages of the religious texts, the Quran. To directly contradict or challenge the views in the Quran is basically an attack against Allah and their religion. I'm sure I'm severely under describing this and not giving it the thought that it deserves.
I did that, that's my fault.
All that is to say that Salman Rushdie, through his elegant thinking, his way of being critical about all the writings, the teachings, he just kind of tells his story, his experience from a very rationalist point of view. It's remarkable that, in the telling that he describes, there was never any pearly whites, no clouds, no light. He just sunk into his trauma. But he goes through a lot of what actually happened. There's been a lot of mystery. A lot of people had guesses. They had tales that they had spun through finding out information from second and third hand sources. But Salman was very much went into hiding so that people couldn't find him. It upended his world. It's just a touching telling from a master author, in my opinion. Salman is a wordsmith. It's amazing how he just kind of takes your hand as a reader and walks you through whatever passages he's doing. You completely understand it, but it's almost like musical or poetic from sentence to sentence. His mastery of the English language is second to none, practically, in my opinion. So the book Knife kind of goes through the event and the aftermath, and how something so ugly could turn into something beautiful.
Oh, there it is.
I have been curious about what happened for a long time, because I've loved Salman Rushdie. I've read his Midnight's Children. I've read a few other of his books, and they've all been just magical works of art, and I've never come away from reading one of Salman's books feeling unsatisfied. I mean, you have to be, in your mind, you have to be ready to take on something that's a little more than your average read, but Salman is just elegant. His prose, he's just amazing.
I'm just a huge fan.
I recommend definitely picking it up if you're a Salman Rushdie fan. It is very revealing into his mindset and his thoughts coming out of it. This author has always got to be watching his back, unfortunately, for just the mere ideas that he has printed on paper. And that culture has tried to ban this book on numerous occasions, but what happens so often is when you try to ban writing, it eventually grows bigger and it feeds the fire, and more people become curious about it. Ideas are hard to stamp out, and these are very important ideas. Thinking outside of the box that we're sometimes raised in is a very important thing. We grow from that. The box gets bigger. Granted, we're still in a box, but we grow. So that is very much about what Knife is about. Sure, it cut through things, but it's also about regrowth and repair. So what a wonderful book. It's not a big challenging read or anything, but it's very insightful. So again, if you're a fan of Salman Rushdie, or if you've heard about things, maybe you're curious about what happened, this book is definitely for you. So because it's a memoir, I wouldn't necessarily grade it. It's just the way he talks about his experience, but it was very engaging. I would say that for a memoir, it's probably 4.5 out of 5 robes. So I don't know if even giving it a robes rating is appropriate, because I don't know. It's his telling of his story, his thoughts, his life, what happened. So thank you all for watching. Appreciate your time. Remember to like and subscribe, and remember, keep reading.